Hello. So I picked this randomly, well, actually not randomly. I was trying to make some room on my shelves. They're now overflowing, and so I was taking out certain things that I don't listen to a lot, and this was one of them. Um, the album is Alannah Myles by Alannah Myles. And if you don't know Alannah Myles, well, you wouldn't be alone in that. She is most famous, probably only famous for the song in the late 80s, I think it was about 89, 90, Black Velvet, that you still hear on the radio today, on those kinds of, not classic hit stations. Well, I guess kind of classic hits because that's over 35 years old now, but uh, I don't know what other kind of stations you'd call them, the kind of stations that play a little bit of everything. Songs of the 80s, 90s, and today, those kinds of stations. Um, in some ways, she is really a perfect example of a one-hit wonder because really the only song uh, she ever did of note was that song Black Velvet, and she never really did anything after or before because I'm pretty sure this was her debut album. She's actually Canadian, and her birth name is Alannah Biles with a B. I think it's Biles. It definitely started with a B, and she changed it to Myles because I guess it sounds more, I don't know, Alannah Biles. Bile, if it is bile, it might not be bile. Bile obviously has that connotation of bile, like the stuff in your stomach that you vomit up sometimes. I've listened through this a few times in my life, uh, and I just listened through to it twice just this afternoon. I gotta say, beyond that song Black Velvet, uh, it's pretty formulaic, mid late 80s rock with a woman singing. But really, kind of imagine if you like kind of put it into an AI computer or whatever they're called, an AI program, and said, like I said, mid to late 80s rock with a little bit of a hard edge, not metal or hard rock, but a little bit of a harder edge. Female singing, very kind of formulaic, as in kind of all the drum beats kind of four on the floor, lots of power chords. And if they put all that stuff together, I would imagine that the AI program would spit out something. The music would be something like you would hear on this. Really, like it's nothing stands out. The only song that stands out is I think it was "Who Loves You." Was it that one? One of them starts off with a kind of softer, darker introduction and verse, but then the chorus is straight back to the cliches. And then of course the song you can see why the song Black Velvet was a hit off this album, because if that song wasn't on the album, I can't imagine any of these songs would have been a hit. They weren't. There were no other hits on this, but sometimes you say, well, if that single wasn't on there and they kind of pushed another single, that could have had the potential to be. But just listening through to them, you'd say, no, there's nothing at all that stands out. But in saying that, a lot of music did kind of become popular back then that wasn't particularly exciting or innovative or anything like that. So yeah, the kind of image that they're trying to portray, and you see this. See how that you didn't really notice this before, but see the way the font and the style they've written her name. That's kind of like a like it's chrome, like you'd see on a car, like that especially with the A to the L. It has got the line underneath. Everything connects together. Isn't that how they do the? I think it's Cadillac, maybe. And then with the kind of the way they do that, I don't know the name of that font, but the way it's chromed out in metal, it's trying to at least hint at that kind of, cars and rock music and leather skirts, or what is that leather? I actually don't know what it is. Kind of could be PVC for all I know, but she's wearing a leather jacket. So again, it's not kind of like she's not just looking at that there. It's just looking at that. That could, if you took away the font, that could be the headshot album cover art for a kind of like a ballad singer, or like kind of like a female diva type. With the vocal is the main thing. From that same era, she's quite pretty. Kind of got the 50s movie star type thing. Her hair's a little bit all over the place, but the red lipstick and the dark hair and the dark eyes and the cheekbones. And then that song, Black Velvet, that kind of, am I making sense here? Sometimes I go off on these lines of thought, and then I realize it may only make sense to me, and I might just be kind of like talking absolute rubbish. But like I was saying, they're not kind of like expressly putting her sitting on a motorbike, for example, with a mini skirt and a leather jacket and with like really, like I said, chromed out stuff and wearing sunglasses. They dial it back a little bit and try to be more subtle and more allude to it with the font that. And then the titles of some of the songs, they're pretty formulaic again, but Black Velvet, I think that kind of alludes to it a little bit. Rock This Joint, Kickstart My Heart. It's not the Motley Crue song, if you're wondering. Hurry Make Love, Who Loves You, Lover of Mine, a lot of kind of love, or Love Is. So there's 4 or 5 songs there that mention love. Put out on Atlantic, so it's a major label release. Obviously, everything back then was major label. I mean, anything that was played on the radio was major label. She didn't write the songs. She performed them. You can see the songwriters are, she may have been a part of, I can't actually see her name featuring anywhere here though. The main, there we go. She's A. Myles on Lover of Mine. She's got a credit there. But was C. Ward, it was Chris Ward maybe? He was her boyfriend, and D. Tyson, which was Daniel or David Tyson. They seem to be popping up the most. But yeah, that Ward guy was her boyfriend. And also gets an executive producer credit, whereas David Tyson gets the producer credit. It's kind of funny how a lot of these albums, you notice that a female singer, very few songwriting credits, and then the songwriters are also the producers. And then we've got this lineup of people, involved. Look at it. An army. Guitars, acoustic guitars, mandolin, bass, drums. Don't recognize any of these names. Keyboards, keyboard programming. Scott Humphrey. I wonder if that's Scott. Wasn't the guy, the producer, maybe that was Scott Humphreys, IES, of the kind of that the 90s era of Motley Crue. I'm pretty sure his name was Scott Humphrey or Scott Humphreys. Now I think about it, might have been Humphreys. Customized guitars. Look, he's got a different name there. So guitars is Kurt Schefter and Bob Bartolucci. And then customized guitars and amplifiers is Roberto Bartolucci. Do you think Bob Bartolucci and Roberto Bartolucci are the same people? Maybe they're brothers. I doubt it. I'd say they're the same people because Roberto is Bob is the small, the diminutive. What do we call that? The nickname? saxophones, trumpets, percussion, background vocals. The Bikers, what's that all about? Who would know what the Bikers are? Maybe it's like the road crew or something. Recorded at, okay, so like I said, she's Canadian, recorded in Canada. Engineered, assisted by. And then we got, again, you know, it's crazy how I don't really buy modern pop music. So I don't really get a chance to, or really interested in looking at the kind of liner notes. Say, for example, someone like Taylor Swift, or not even someone as big as her, kind of, who's an example of a level down from Taylor Swift? I don't even know. Whatever, kind of a mid-level pop star of nowadays. Do they still have these armies of people, you know, doing every single part? Because nowadays everything is so much more accessible, because, you know, you can have literally all of the things here on a laptop computer, can't you? You can have every kind of instrument synthesized in a fairly natural way. You can do all that engineering and producing and mixing, as long as you have some. And if you can't, you can get one person who could do all that very well. Yeah, so obviously someone like Taylor Swift, she can afford and whatever to have session musicians brought in for every single little, you know, to play the triangle and the xylophone. But someone who's kind of starting out in their career, it's just not necessary to have these like massive, you know, long lists of professionals coming in to do the things, because you can do it all yourself. So it's amazing how big the record industry used to be and how many jobs it would have supported. And now it's really the live aspect is supporting more jobs than the recorded aspect ever did nowadays. Anyway, and then we got over here, we got some more mix and masterers, and we got the photographer, art direction, lettering. So here the lettering design is done by Valerie Sinclair. She made the choice on that lettering. Okay, we're going to make it so it's silver chrome. And we're going to give it like a kind of automobile rock kind of look. And look at that, management, Danny Goldberg for Gold Mountain. Wasn't he the manager? I'm thinking of someone else. I'm pretty sure he was the manager of Nirvana at some stage. Could be wrong there. I'm thinking of another name, another Jewish name, like Silver. Silver's not a Jewish name, is it? But I'm pretty sure something Silver was one of the Nirvana managers, or maybe it was. I might be getting confused there. But certainly Gold Mountain Entertainment and Danny Goldberg sounds familiar from one of those Seattle bands. Obviously not Alice in Chains with Soundgarden, because that was Susan Silver. Is that where I'm getting Silver from? Fuck, who knows? Who cares? Special thanks to all these people. See if I recognize anyone. No. Much Music. Remember Much Music? If you're Canadian, you will. We used to get some Much Music content down here in New Zealand. There was a channel that started in the late 90s called C4 or Channel 4. Now, C4 was later, but originally it was Channel 4. And they used to get all sorts of bits and pieces on there. They used to get things kind of youth-oriented content from around the world, from MTV and from Europe, from America, and like Beavis and Butthead and all other kind of that early stage of kind of adult cartoons. Dr. Katz, remember that? The therapist. And also there was a lot of Much Music, like documentaries and shows. And it was kind of strange because a lot of the stuff they were talking about was very, Canada specific, like talking about the Tragically Hip and Our Lady Peace. So sure, eventually became a little bit more bigger outside Canada. But, certainly some of those bands they talked about, we had no idea who they were before or since. But anyway, all those at Vidal Sassoon, they're what the shampoo company. What's her hair look like? Got some nice hair. Not that you can really see it that well in the photo, so maybe the shampoo really helps her out. I'm just going through looking at these names because it's always interesting to see how the different names cross over and you see names pop up. But I don't really recognize any of these. Probably because she's Canadian and it's not the same American. For helping turn my dream into reality. Oh, Christopher, that's Christopher Ward, her boyfriend and slash. He also kind of got her discovered. I think he shopped her demos around and got signed to Atlantic. Dave, maybe that's Dave Tyson. In memory of, here we go, the late William D. Byles. So that's, like I said, that's her original name, Myles Byles. We will love you forever. Maybe that's her granddad or her dad. Hopefully her granddad, because you'd be very young to lose your dad. This record is made with the assistance of Factor. Who knows what that is? So yeah, there really wasn't much interesting there, was there? That song, Black Velvet, I like that song in that kind of 80s one-hit wonder way. It's not like a song that I would play at my funeral or something. I mean, it's a good song, and as many times as I've heard it, the part that I really like about it, I like the lyrics and the imagery that they use in the lyrics. That kind of southern, they're talking about the sun is setting like molasses in the sky. Mama's got a baby on her shoulders. Something about a Victrola, like the radio, listening to that song. It's a what do you call it? A homage, or no, homage is maybe not the right word. A tribute to Elvis Presley. The guy who wrote it, I think Christopher Ward, was on a bus with a group of Elvis enthusiasts going to Graceland for the 10th anniversary of his death. He died in 77, and this was 87. Which is crazy when you think, because Elvis just, to me, seems like such a distant figure. He's like, I don't know, like an icon that wasn't even actually real. He was like Mickey Mouse or something, like that. You know what I mean? That's his kind of position. Because he died before I was born. But you think about it, I was a kid in 1987, and so in my memory, 1987 doesn't seem like a lifetime ago, even though it kind of was, but it's like within my lifetime. I was like, well, I can remember I was a kid, I remember doing this, I was at school. But then to think, well, that was only 10 years separated from when Elvis died. And you kind of think, it was like from when I was a kid, anyway. And when he was on the bus with these Elvis enthusiasts going to Graceland, he kind of was not touched, but inspired, or maybe not even that, not even inspired, but kind of like it kind of took him aback to see this love and this adoration that these people had for this guy who had been dead for 10 years and was maybe 20 years past his prime. Kind of seeing them all travel for hours and hours on a bus, and they were singing his songs and going to to a vigil at Graceland to honor his death and all that kind of stuff. And so that inspired him to write the song. And the song is, if you listen to the lyrics and we'll read the lyrics, you can see the imagery is kind of like I said, those lyrics. He's like kind of painting a southern landscape. Kind of, I'm not trying not to use the word image again, but image. And then they talk more directly about Elvis. I don't have the lyrics exactly in my mind right now, but maybe they're on this. Something about he's got a little boy smile, that he had them rolling in the aisles. It's not in this. What am I doing? It's not in here. I already looked at that. The way that he moved was a sin, so sweet and true. Something there, black velvet, with that little boy smile, black velvet, born to drive you wild. A new religion that will bring you to your knees, black velvet, if you please. So that's basically the idea that when Elvis came around in the 50s, it was so groundbreaking for the culture of the time that it was like a new religion. It had people kind of reacting in ways which people have always done and still do to nowadays. A certain demographic, usually teenage girls, go gaga for certain artists and faint and scream and cry and roll in the aisles, as she says, or as they said. But then that was in the 50s, and obviously we know that his fame kind of ebbed and flowed through the 60s, and he had a bit of a comeback in the late 60s, but throughout the 70s he kind of was a diminished figure and gained weight and all the rest of it and lost popularity. But when he died, I wasn't alive, but from what I've seen and heard and read, it was like a massive shock, because A, he was pretty young, and B, of his monumental influence and position in the cultural pantheon of the 20th century, at least the latter half of the 20th century. And so but then roll on another 10 years to 1987, there's still people out there who are making pilgrimages to the place of his death. And that's pretty rare. That doesn't happen for everyone, obviously. You think about it, for someone like John Lennon, obviously, people still kind of honor the day he died or was murdered. I don't know, are there any others? The only two I can think of are John Lennon and Elvis Presley. To that degree, I know there are other ones, like people go to like the grave of like Dimebag Darrell or Chris Cornell, but not in the same way that they do for John Lennon and Elvis Presley, because their fame was much, much, much magnitudes more higher, larger and more impactful. And so, yeah, that's why that's the inspiration for the song. But the part that I especially love is, I'm forgetting the lyrics, but is that, so it starts off and it's got a very kind of, like I said, the way that lyric says, the sun is setting like molasses in the sky. That first kind of intro and that verse is like that. It feels like it's super slow and kind of like bubbling and like quite dark. And then it does that thing, the pre-chorus. It kind of does this like descending thing, which I can't explain, but if you know what I mean. So that's the bass going through the verse. And then when she says the sun is sitting like molasses in the sky, and then it kind of goes do 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 do, and the kind of the organ or keyboard and the guitar do something that kind of, I'm not sure what it is and how to describe it musically, but it kind of is like it's moving a step down, like a key change or something, and it goes into the pre-chorus and then eventually the chorus. But that key change down from the verse into the pre-chorus, every time I hear that, kind of gives me like goosebumps. There's like a few like musical things and random songs that do it for me. Like, for example, what's that? The song by the Police. Is it The King of Pain? Yeah, King of Pain. Same thing in the verse of that song, The King of Pain. There's a little black star on the star, da, da, and the bass is like da, da, and then there's this on the second pass of the verse, it does this harmonized bass thing. Like it's harmonizing with two basses, or like a lower and a high, or a keyboard, but it goes beep, beep. But in the I know this sounds stupid, in the background there's like a playing at the same time. So it's like this, it kind of makes me a little bit dizzy when I hear it. But every single time I hear that, it does something to my brain and releases some sort of chemical into my body. It gives me goosebumps. Listen to that verse, that first, or not just the first verse, any verse of the song The King of Pain by the Police. That, there's about a handful of other songs that do the same thing. It's like a magic trick or something that I can play on my body, and it doesn't matter how many times I've heard it, it does the same thing, like makes the hair stand up on the back of my neck. So yeah, I know that's been a fairly rambling and pointless review, but I think it's a fairly kind of run-of-the-mill album from a bygone era, one-hit wonder. that was kind of quite common at that time. And it really was a one-hit wonder because it went number one. The single, actually I'm talking about Black Velvet, not the album, but the single Black Velvet went number one on the Billboard Hot 100, as well as many other countries like Sweden. And if it didn't go number one, it went somewhere in the top 5 around all those usual markets you think of in, you know, North America, Western Europe, Japan, New Zealand, Australia, all those kinds of places went number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The album also did pretty well. Pretty sure it sold 6 million copies worldwide, this album, which is pretty nuts, considering that's very much off the back of that one single. But we've talked about that before, how back then one single could absolutely give you a platinum album easily, let alone a 6 times platinum album. But really nothing else happened after that. Now I think she had like it was either 3 or 6, a multi-album deal with Atlantic. And this was her debut. So you can imagine this sold 6 million around the world. Let's say 1.5 in America, which I know isn't like the greatest thing in the world, but it's still pretty good for a debut album from some Canadian girl. So they must have had some sort of kind of hope for a follow-up, that she was going to kind of at least maybe do as well again, or maybe even better, but nothing ever happened. I don't even think I've ever seen any of her other albums before. So yeah, it was that kind of time though, where someone could kind of come out of nowhere, have a massive song, sell millions of albums, go number 1 in multiple countries, and then just kind of disappear off the face of the earth for all intents and purposes. Little do we know, they were probably working their ass off trying to make the next albums happen, but they just couldn't get any kind of traction. Anyway, this would have been bought for 50 cents. I wouldn't have paid over 50 cents for this. Alannah Myles, self-titled, Atlantic, 1989. Condition, perfect. Looks like it's never been played, which it probably wasn't. The person who owned this probably played Black Velvet a few times and then never put it on again. Anyway, thanks for watching.